Today, we lit the second candle of Advent, the candle of peace. In our polarized world, a little peace would feel pretty good right about now. I don't know about you, but I am tired of the relentless demonization of those who think differently, the use of violence and intimidation in an effort to get one's own way, and the incivility that encapsulates our communities. I'm also tired of a growing belief that one's right to something somehow supersedes the right of someone else for theirs, and that there is no room in our society any longer for the diversity of thought, let alone life. As a society, we are becoming so distrustful of one another that if a modern-day John the Baptist began to preach a message of hope and peace, I believe such a prophet would be scorned and ignored. I'm not sure where such animosity and anger will lead us, but this I know. It will not lead us towards the path we are called to walk. The path that leads to a peace which is beyond human understanding. I've said before, if, as a society, we are going to change direction, it begins with us. One person, one community, willing to walk apart from the masses in the direction of an emerging light that leads us along a path defined not by our desires, but by God's grace. Such willingness cannot be forced. It must come from within us. What is it that encourages us to do so? The Holy Spirit, who dwells in us and with us and among us, leading us to all truth. And at the heart of all truth is God's promise of peace, found in the midst of God's love, grace, and mercy. Peace that is shared freely with all those who are willing to receive it and abide in it. God's peace, or shalom, is more than the absence of conflict, hostility, or chaos. It is about a oneness, a wholeness that arises out of the restoration of our relationships with God, one another, and with all creation. From what I have learned over the years, shalom is not meant to be just an experience. It is meant to be something that we become part of. It's about a balance or a harmony that exists both externally and internally that brings with it a joy that cannot exist without it. It is something we cannot generate ourselves, but it's a gift from God. A gift to those who hear and answer God's call to enter into it. Those who do are not promised an easy path to walk. Instead, what we are promised is that the journey is not made alone, but with the Lord walking at our side and the Holy Spirit guiding the way. While our wants may go unfulfilled, our needs are not unheeded. While the dangers we face may be perilous to the body, And while the sorrows we endure weigh heavily on our hearts, they are only temporary. All this we know. Because on a night some 2,000 years ago, a light came into the world to reveal the depth of God's love for us and to show us the way to the peace that we long for. A peace that replaces what troubles us with a joy that never ends. Joy that arises out of our oneness, our unity, our completeness. In a love so great, nothing can overpower it. We might ask, if God's love is so great, then why? Why is the peace we long for not here in our midst? Why do we have all this divisiveness, this anger, this unholy behavior that seeks the elevation of oneself, or wants or desires, above all else, and above all others? This is not a new question, but one asked of Peter when the promise of Jesus' return seemed to go unfulfilled. Peter's answer? It was. It is. It will be forever. But to know it in its fullness takes time. You see, it's not like walking through a door, flipping on a switch, and poof, there it is. The peace we long for, the peace we seek, he says, is transformative and happens as we journey in faith along the pathway God has set before us. We may step off that path once in a while. We may choose to stop when we should continue. We may even get frustrated with how long the journey will take. Those Peter wrote to sure were. But he assures them and us that the transformation is happening. Like a modern-day dimmer switch, slowly bringing light to the shadows. It replaces our fears and anxieties with a confidence and an excitement that slowly builds and builds until it reaches the point of overflowing, thereby enabling us to share more freely. It enables people to know what we know and share in what we share. The abundance brings a joy that replaces our worry. Our concern for self is replaced by our concern for others. And instead of carrying the weight of our guilt, we know and can share in real forgiveness. Forgiveness that frees us to see one another for who we are. Children of God. Advent reminds us that this is not just some future aspiration, but something we can begin to enjoy and embrace here in this life. Because God's love does not wait for us to seek it. It came to us and still does. Not as a prize for a job well done, just the opposite. It came and it comes that we might know it, embrace it, and live into the peace and joy it offers, as it transforms our tendencies towards worldliness and self-gratification to ones of heavenly desire and the oneness of a community. A community that both seeks and welcomes all into a wholeness, a peace which does surpass human understanding. As we prepare for our celebration of when the pathway to this peace was open to all through the incarnation, let us do so not only with eyes in search of what lays ahead, but seeking that which is also here in our midst. And I'm not talking about the pandemic, its obstacles, its dangers, but to the love, grace, and mercy of God which surrounds us and supports us each and every day, each and every hour, each and every minute. That a glimpse of the joy it offers will enable us to have hope in the peace of Shalom, the peace that walks with us and guides us along the way.